Hey there, and welcome. So let's talk about voting in the UK. You'd think it's simple, right? You cast your vote, it gets counted, but how it gets counted can completely change who ends up running the country. So how on earth does it all actually work?
And that right there is the million-dollar question. How do you take all of these millions of different voices and opinions and translate them into one government? Well, the answer is tricky, because the UK doesn't just have one system. It has several. So let's break them down.
All right, let's kick things off with a big one. This is the system that's used for UK general elections, the one that decides who gets into Westminster. It's called first past the post. The easiest way to think about it is like a whole bunch of local races happening all at once. The entire country is sliced up into these areas called constituencies. In your little area, you vote for one candidate, and whoever gets the most votes, even if it's just one more vote than the person in second place, wins the whole thing. It's pure winner takes all.
So here's how it plays out for you. You go to the polling station, you get one vote, you pick one candidate. Simple. Now, the person who wins doesn't need to get over 50% of the vote. They just need to have more votes than anybody else. And here's the really crucial part. Every single vote for every other losing candidate, poof, they're gone. They don't count towards anything else.
Now, the big selling point for this system, the main argument for it, is that it usually gives you a really clear result. One party tends to win a majority of the seats in Parliament, which allows them to form a government all on their own. And that's often seen as being strong, stable, and decisive.
Okay, but here's where it gets complicated. Does that clear, decisive result actually reflect what the country as a whole wanted? Let's take a look at some numbers, because this is where it gets really interesting. And this just illustrates the disconnect perfectly. Look at the 2015 election. The Conservatives got just under 37% of the total votes, but that translated into an outright majority of seats in Parliament. Now look at UKIP. They got almost 13% of the votes nationwide and ended up with one single MP, one. And on the flip side, the SNP got less than 5% of the UK vote, but because their support was packed into Scottish constituencies, they walked away with 56 seats. It's pretty wild. This all leads to this idea of wasted votes. A wasted vote is basically any vote that didn't help elect a winner. So if you voted for a losing candidate, that's a wasted vote. And get this, in the 2010 election, a staggering 71% of all votes cast fell into that category. They had no impact on the final result. The other thing this system creates is something called safe seats. You know what I mean? Those areas where one party wins every single time, without fail. If you live there and you don't support that party, it can feel like your vote is pretty much pointless, that you have no real power to change things. And honestly, that can be a real turnoff for voters.
But first past the post isn't the only game in town. In other parts of the UK, they use totally different systems that are all about making the results more proportional. So let's see how they build a different kind of government.
Okay, first up, we have the Additional Member System, or AMS. You'll find this in Scotland and Wales, and it's a really clever mix of two ideas. You get two votes. The first one is for your local candidate, just like in a general election. But the second one is for a political party across a much wider region, and that second vote is used to add top-up members to make sure the final result is a better reflection of how popular each party was overall. Check this out. This table from Wales in 2016 shows it in action. So Labour won a ton of the local constituency seats, right? But their share of the party list vote was way lower. So to balance things out, the system adds those regional top-up members. And you can see how parties like Plaid Cymru and UKIP got seats they would never have won otherwise. It's designed to correct that imbalance. Then we have the Single Transferable Vote, or STV, which they use in Northern Ireland. This one's really different. Instead of just picking one person, you rank the candidates in the order you like them. First choice, second choice, third choice, and so on. If your number one choice gets knocked out or wins with extra votes, your vote isn't wasted. It just gets passed on to your second choice. The process keeps going until all the seats are filled, making sure almost every vote counts for something.
So as you can see, the UK is basically this living, breathing experiment in different ways of voting. You've got Westminster sticking with first past the post, while Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland are all off using these more proportional methods for their own governments.
So what's the upshot of all this? How do these different rulebooks actually change the political game and, the final score?
This table really sums up the big trade-offs. First past the post usually gives you a single party in charge, but you get less choice as a voter. The proportional systems, well, they almost always mean parties have to team up and form coalitions. But in return, voters get way more choice, and the parliament ends up looking a lot more like how the country actually voted. Now, you often hear the criticism that proportional systems lead to messy, unstable governments that are always falling apart. But the evidence from Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, it kind of tells a different story. As this quote points out, those power-sharing governments have actually been pretty stable over the years.
And what's really fascinating is that even at Westminster, that old first-past-the-post certainty seems to be fading. We had the big coalition government back in 2010, and then that deal after the 2017 hung parliament. It kind of seems like power sharing is becoming more of a thing across the UK, no matter what system is being used.
And all of this brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. It's all about how we define what's fair in an election. What are we actually trying to achieve? And really, that's the question I want to leave you with. There is no easy answer here. It's a fundamental choice about what we want from our democracy. Is the top priority having a clear winner who can govern decisively? Or is it more important to have a parliament that truly mirrors all the different political views across the country? The system you choose shapes everything that comes after.